team and played roles for them. And one of the things that I look at with this trade is I just don't know, Jason, how they're going to fill the roster out. Because right now they have 4 guys under contract, excuse me, 5 guys under contract. And Mo Wagner is not even a piece. Mo Wagner has done nothing in the league. Bonga has done nothing in the league. I mean, you are asking an awful lot here of Rob Pelinka to fill out this roster, and that's before they get a free agent. So if they get a max guy, they are going to be filling out basically the rest of the roster with minimum salaries and exceptions. And if we look back at that Heat year, that Heat team, it took them another season to get a few guys. So I mean, the year after they get a guy like Shane Battier. Shane Battier makes a huge difference. And I think people kind of forget how important Battier was to them winning the title. And then obviously the next year that they win, they get Ray Allen. So you have these kind of subsequent moves that really help them out. And without those 2 guys, you can kind of make the case that they don't win. And that doesn't even include that they end up with Norris Cole, who they draft. So there's a number of these moves that really pushed the Heat onwards. And I think you could make the case that as much as those players don't get remembered, there's a very good chance that they don't win the titles that they do. I mean, they were winning close series against the Pacers, the Celtics, the Thunder series. I think was closer than people remember it now. All these series, I mean, they were really pretty tight, and they needed those guys. And what I wonder with this Lakers team is how the heck, Jason, they're going to get the rest of a roster. They have no money to spend, and if they get a max guy, they get a Kemba Walker, that's it. I mean, they're going to have a mid-level type exception, maybe a taxpayer exception, and minimum contracts. And they're going to have to fill out a starting lineup with that, Jason. Not to mention that you could make the case that the 3 best players on the Lakers all play the same position. I mean, Davis prefers to play the power forward position. LeBron has begun his transformation into more of a power forward. Kuzma is playing the power forward position. I mean, you could make the case that Davis will play center, Kuzma and LeBron will play the 2 forward spots, but point being, there is not a lot of versatility on the roster at this point, and it's going to be a big ask for a front office that really struggled last year, Jason. I mean, you look at the moves that the Lakers made last season to fill out the roster around LeBron. I mean, they are largely responsible for their inability to make the playoffs or even really get all that close because of how poorly all those additions played. I mean, we talked about Beasley. We talked about Caldwell Pope. We talked about Rajon Rondo and these guys. I mean, it's hard to imagine they're going to do much better than those guys this year, Jason. And that's a scary thought, I think, if you're a Lakers fan.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I do think that Kuzma will play the 3, LeBron the 4, and Davis the 5. And then if they do get a max level point guard, then, they'll have one of the best starting lineups in the league. But then the obvious question is, how do they fill out their bench? It's going to be very, very interesting. Kuzma, the fact that they were able to hang on to him is a miracle in and of itself. He was looking like a very likely inclusion in that Davis deal. And the fact that the Pelicans said yes to the deal, 5 days before the draft, even without Kuzma, says a lot about, Davis really wanted to get out of there, man. So definitely something to keep tabs on. This summer is going to be wild in the NBA. I'm just going to go out and say something that may not be popular. I'm not really that excited for the draft, man. I mean, there's some good talent, the top 10 picks or whatever. And then after that, it's a giant crapshoot. Like, we know Zion's going to the Pelicans. Mm-hmm. We know that Ja Morant is most likely going to the Grizzlies. RJ Barrett came out 2 weeks ago and said, I'm only working out for the Knicks. I want to be here. So after that, I mean, where's the excitement? We don't know. So it's all a giant crapshoot. I mean, are you along the same lines as me? I really can't get too excited for the draft, man.
I'll tell you one thing, Jason, which is just that I feel like it's here too quickly. The season just ended, and I really haven't had time to digest the draft. It feels like they would almost be better pushing it back just a week or two to let everyone kind of...
They can't, though. Free agency starts June 30th. When are they doing the draft?
I mean, what I'm saying is it might make sense to push it all back just a little, to give a little breathing room between the NBA Finals and when all this kicks off, because it really does feel like this just finished and we're already at the draft. And it, for me at least, I felt like I just don't have time to look at what's going on. I mean, it's going to be... I mean, I'm excited for the draft in some respects because there are some really interesting decisions to be made, and I think after the top three, there's not a clear consensus who the guys are. I think a lot of people really like Darius Garland, but there's kind of a mishmash after that. News came out that the Knicks rejected the Hawks offer to try and get up to number three when they were going to package their picks 8 and 10 to get up there. And I think that speaks to the fact that a lot of teams would really like to get in that top three. I think the Knicks are probably smart to reject that trade, but it does speak to that, and it's going to be interesting to see how teams approach it this year. Teams like the Hawks that have multiple picks, teams like the Pelicans have allegedly been shopping the number four. Would the Hawks make the same deal for number four? It's unclear. It seems like they're trying to get a guy like Barrett. Would they try to do something for one of those other guys? Not sure, but I mean, it's going to be a very interesting draft. I'm not going to be shocked though, Jason, if there are a number of trades outside of the top three, because it feels like one of those drafts where teams are going to have very different boards. That's just the feeling I'm getting just looking at all this, is that there's a kind of a different evaluation process by a lot of the different folks. I feel like normally there's kind of a consensus as to what the board looks like, and it feels like this year there are some outfits that feel a guy like Kobe White out of North Carolina could be the best point guard in this draft. And then there's others who feel like he's borderline top 10. Cam Reddish. I think some people, especially prior to the season, felt like he was a top 3 guy. Now he's someone who could even fall out of the top 10. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think that could lend itself to some trades on draft night.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to see too many veterans moved. I think the biggest domino was Davis and Sean Marks moving Alan Crabb to clear the contract off the books. Other than that, I mean, there's maybe some surprises, but there's no other situations where like, oh, this guy's going to get moved. I think everyone just kind of wants to get through the draft, evaluate these young guys, and everyone, unless you are hard capped, is looking forward to free agency, and that's going to be in 12 days. So buckle up, folks. We are in for a wild ride.
Yep, absolutely. I'll make my last thing here, which is that as far as the Bulls, since my beloved Bulls do have a pick in the top 10, I'm hoping, Jason, that they get one of the. I hope someone drops to them ultimately. I mean, I really think there's a few tiers. There's tier 1, which is Zion, tier 2, which I think is Morant and Barrett, and then kind of tier 2.5 from a lot of folks is that Garland is kind of in his own area. And then after that, I think there's kind of a third tier of Kobe White, DeAndre Hunter, and Jarrett Culver. And those are kind of the next 3 guys. So I'm hoping one of those guys, I'd like to see who the Bulls get. I mean, I think any of those guys that I mentioned, 4 to 7.
I think Reddish would look great in a Bulls uniform.
I'm not sure. I mean, I like a lot of what he does. I'm just not sure if he has the mental makeup. And I would love to see, any of the guys I just mentioned, Darius Garland, one of the highest ceiling players outside of Williamson in this draft. Kobe White has tremendous athleticism, could really fit well in the team. So I could see him being a nice fit. And then Hunter and Culver would fit beautifully on the Bulls right now with their need for defensive stoppers on the perimeter and the fact that they can hit open jump shots, which are really the 2 key ingredients that the Bulls are looking for. So I think the Bulls are weirdly in a good spot because I think they're pretty much guaranteed to get one of those guys. And I think all of them will be a good fit for the Bulls team that's out there. So I'm excited to see what they do. After that, Jason, I mean, there's a little bit of a drop off. I mean, I think once you go past that, you're starting to talk about some of the international guys like Cam Reddish, Nasir Little, PJ Washington, Tyler Hero, guys who have very obvious kind of warts on their game. That isn't to say that they won't be good, but they have to really develop certain parts of their game to become all-star caliber players. I mean, Reddish, obviously, we just saw him at Duke, and we saw the struggles he had. I mean, guys like Hero just don't have an overall game right now. So, I think after those guys in the top 7, it's harder to see guys who are going to be real all-stars. I mean, they seem like they're going to be stars in a role more so, except for my guy Bol Bol, who I love Bol Bol. So I'm interested to see where he goes. But otherwise, it should be exciting. And like you said, Jason, on the heels of that, we will see what should be yet again an astonishingly exciting NBA free agency. Um, any final thoughts for the people here?
I'm just going to go out on a limb here and suggest, what if they did the lottery the night before the draft? I'm just thinking out loud here. I know it doesn't give teams enough time to prep, but like we knew Zion was going to the Pelicans for like a month. And I wish they would drag it out a little bit longer, being the lottery is so much more an even playing field. Like, do you think that has any, shtick to it, or do you think I'm just talking senseless?
I mean, I wouldn't mind moving it back a little so it's not as ingrained with the playoffs, but
And in the middle of the second round?
I mean, I don't know. I'd like to see it maybe a little bit further out, but not. I don't know if I'd want it the night before. I'd just like in general to have a little more time to digest the draft. I mean, I think if you think about it, it just sort of it's just bam, bam, bam. And I wouldn't mind the whole process being moved back maybe about a week. The draft and free agency start about a week later to let teams do it, or literally you do the draft a week later and then free agency is the next day, and that's it. It's just
The
one
NBA is
after the other.
becoming a 12-month sport, man. I think it's spread out nicely. From when the finals ended, we have a week to the draft and a week to free agency, then free agency, summer league, and before you know it, it's training camp. It is a 12-month sport.
I can't wait. We're gonna have another show for everyone next week. We're gonna break down the draft, take a look at free agency. I mean, with the way things have been going in past seasons, it's likely we're gonna have some deals already kind of pseudo done by next week. Teams may have already kind of come to some terms, and at least there might be some leaks from Woj about that, so we'll go over any of those. We're gonna preview what's going on. We're gonna have a couple other special things in store for you this summer. We got a few ideas cooked up for a few special pods, and we're going to be looking to do, of course, some reflections on the draft, some previews during summer league, and as the season nears next season, we'll be talking about previews for teams. But what a season, Jason! I couldn't have
Yes.
had a better partner than you for it, and I can't believe it's over. But the off season begins, as you said, the 12-month season continues, and I just want to say to all the listeners, we thank you so much for listening all season long. And Jason, to you, thank you for being my compadre here all season. It's been an undivided pleasure.
Yeah, you believe it, buddy? I mean, I feel the same. You're awesome. I'm very lucky that we have the show to do together, every week, and we've become pretty good friends in the process from starting this as strangers. Do you realize that from a mock phone call to see like how our chemistry would be, we've now covered two NBA full seasons in its entirety, regular season and postseason. We're going into our third off season of coverage. It's
And we've
incredible.
got Uncle Jason here. I mean, we've decided we're gonna have to switch it from dad jokes to uncle jokes with the adorable pictures. I mean, if you're lucky enough to find Jason on Facebook or Instagram, add him to get some adorable baby photos because they are fantastic. And Uncle
Oh, thanks,
Jason,
buddy.
before we mush out too much here and make everyone listening gag, do you have any final thoughts for the people?
I just want my chips with the dip, man. I really do. Do you get that reference? I know I opened the show that way. Do you understand? Do you know that's from?
I don't.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering why you didn't laugh as hard, but basically, they interviewed Drake right after Game 6, and they got his initial reaction. He was just going, "I want my chips with the dip." I guess he was talking about championships. But if you do yourself a favor when we hang up, watch the video, and then when you listen back to this show tomorrow, you'll have that much more of an appreciation for it.
Well, I've got some homework, and I'm going to assign a little homework to our listeners, which is remember to subscribe, rate, and review.
5 stars, please.
And then remember to listen again next week because we're going to have some more good stuff, and we're going to have good stuff throughout the summer. So just because the NBA season's over doesn't mean this podcast is over. Jason, I'm going to kind of leave the season here. Thank you for everything. Thank you to all the listeners, and we'll talk to you next week.
LeBron's a Laker, and so is Anthony Davis.